where Jesus was born, that mountain was not there. So happened that Herod, who was an Edomite reigning in Jerusalem in the land of Israel, wanted to have a palace for himself between Jerusalem, his capital city, and his homeland, Edom. He wanted that palace to be on the top of a mountain. The only problem was there was not a mountain precisely halfway between Jerusalem and his home country of Edom. And so he decided, he'd do what most of us would do faced with this situation, to build a mountain on top of which he would build his palace. Now, this particular palace, when you see it, is the third largest of his palaces. He had a whole series of palaces that he built, again, just in a 30-year period of time during his reign. This is the third largest, so there are two which are larger, of more massive proportion than these. So you can get a sense of this man. But here in this place, he built a mountain. And by the way, if you're making some connections, a few chapters later in chapter 17, Jesus is going to turn to his disciples and say, if you have the faith as small as a mustard seed, you can move mountains. And you may think of this mountain next time you hear that scripture passage, because in his life there was a man who actually moved a mountain. Apparently there was a mountain somewhere else, and now it's here. And this is a modern day picture of it. On top of this mountain, he built a palace. I actually had the opportunity to climb up that mountain and stand on the top. I'm now looking down. It's sort of like a volcano. There's a crater, and you can see the floor of the palace. This palace, you may be able to see the columns at the bottom there, had unbelievable wealth and luxury in it. It was filled with gardens. It was filled with luxuries and comforts like we don't even know. Here's another picture of the tower. It was probably in Herod's day about twice as large. And on top of that mountain, in top of that palace, he had his personal quarters where he would spend his time. He had just unbelievable wealth. Here's an artist's rendering of what that palace looked like. You can see on the left-hand side of the screen where the top of the mountain would have been. That was probably about where I stood. And then this palace emerged. It was several flights high, and at the top of the tower, he lived with luxuries like you and I probably will never come to know. I told you I'd spend some time talking about the swimming pool. I took this picture as I stood on the top of the mountain and looked down. The dimensions of the swimming pool, it's about 70 meters long by 46 meters wide and was 3 meters deep. And if any of you are good at math and you're in the swimming pool business, you may have figured out how many gallons that was. It was about 2 million gallons of water in the swimming pool. To give you an idea of how large that was, today an Olympic-sized swimming pool holds about 600,000 gallons of water. So about 3 times as large. This was at his palace, his personal swimming pool. You can see an island in the middle of it. History tells us that when he wanted to hold meetings with his top officials, that he actually would take a boat across his pool with his official and have the meeting on his island. I mean, this was a man of unbelievable greed, wealth, and power. He wanted his palace to be here. There was no mountain. He moved a mountain so that it could be there. Now, here's what I didn't know until I set foot on top of this mountain. I took this picture from the top of the mountain looking down. This is a picture of modern-day Bethlehem. It's about 2 miles away. And an artist's rendering of what it may have looked like at the time of Jesus. You can see in the background that mountain that Herod built with his palace on top, and in the foreground, a picture perhaps of what it may have looked like the place where Jesus was born. Probably in a cave where animals were kept. There would have been animal feces and dung throughout the cave. And to me, this is a powerful picture. A picture of 2 kings. One living in unbelievable wealth and luxury on the top of a mountain which he had built. The other, a small baby, born in a cave among the filth of animals. And it occurred to me as I stood on that mountain that in the morning when the sun rose, that probably that palace cast a shadow across the very place where Jesus was born. And again, a picture of 2 kings. One who had unbelievable might, power, greed, money, whose entire life was focused on his own self, his own aggrandizement, his own pride, and one who, though being in very nature God, didn't consider equality with God something that you ought to hold on to. And instead of being focused on self, emptied himself, poured himself out, taking on the very nature of a servant, and he humbled himself, even to the point of death on a cross. A picture of two kings. And again, wherever you have two kings, you have a question of allegiance. To whom will you give your allegiance? Who is your king? And there is this epic struggle that has raged throughout history, and I would suggest to you that that struggle continues in our hearts to this very day. Who is your king? And I think it's a particularly good question at this season of the year. I would suggest to you that these two kings epitomize two different ways, two different lifestyles, two different visions of life. One that is bent on self in every imaginable way, and one that is bent on emptying and pouring yourself out on behalf of others. And I would say at this season of the year that this battle is raging in your heart, and you have to decide who is your king. I'm going to show you a series of pictures as I ask you this question: who is your king? Who will you serve? See the picture of unimaginable wealth, houses, boats, cars, money. Does your heart leap for it? Is that your king? Are you more excited to go shopping? Do the lights of the mall burn more brightly in your heart in this season of the year than the light of Jesus Christ? Who is your king? I mean, I don't know, when we're talking about a story of a star which shone in the sky, that it should fall on any of our deaf ears that the light of our shopping malls drown out the light of the sky today. Who is your king? Or in the season of the year, we become more focused on materialism, consumerism, commercialism, upon Santa Claus and his reindeer, than upon the baby who was born in a manger, who poured himself out for you and I. Who is your king? Is your king the one who says, it's about me, this is all about me, and I'm going to get what I can, and I hope I get all the best presents this year because that's what I really want? Or is it about serving the people around you and pouring out your hearts in love because you've been caught up with a vision of one who was born in the shadow of another king whose palace was on top of a mountain that was built by his own hands and his own wealth? Who is your king? Does your heart leap when you see the wealth of the world and the greed that can be yours and the consumerism and the materialism that so categorizes our society? Or does your heart leap for the baby who became nothing so that you could have everything? Who is your king? Wherever there are two kings, there's always a question of allegiance. And there is this epic battle that rages between these two kings who epitomize two different ways of life. The way of life that's all about me, and the way of life that's about serving God and our fellow human being. And I leave you with this question. It's a question of allegiance, because as the battle rages with two different kings, this question always arises: to whom will you give your allegiance?